Welcome to the College Knowledge Podcast, sponsored by the College Planning Network and Paradigm Financial Group. Whether you're searching for that right fit college, applying to college, or figuring out how you're going to afford it all, you're in the right place. You'll hear from deans, admissions counselors, student athletes, and scholars from esteemed universities and colleges around the country. We'll dig deep to uncover their insight and unique experiences. So whether you're a student gearing up for college or a parent with college-bound kids, sit back, relax, and listen. Like you, we have lots of questions. Our guests have the answers, and we're excited to share them with you. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to College Knowledge. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside Mr. Joe Kerns.
Yeah, sometimes people call me Joe the College Pro.
I do every day.
I know you do. Dave, I'm excited for today because it's a topic that I think both of us enjoy talking about. Sometimes we even do episodes along these lines where it's just a studio show, just me and you, but having guests to talk about money and financial planning, and I guess maybe a little bit of even psychology around money might be exciting today.
Everyone, I want to welcome Dr. Timothy Griesdorn to the show. He is the Associate Professor of Finance. He currently holds the Tom Benson Endowed Chair for Finance at the University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas. He's been awarded a bunch of stuff. His research focuses on the economics and how to help consumers make more optimal decisions. And man, if there wasn't an optimal decision that you need to think about, it's college. Dr. Griesdorn, welcome to the show. Why don't you give the viewers a little background about yourself, and then we'll dig in.
Thank you, Dave and Joe. I really appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this show and to give back to the community in some small way. First of all, I'm a first-generation college student. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and my father passed away when I was very young. He passed away when I was 8, leaving a widow and 3 children and 2 businesses. Grew up in an entrepreneurial household, but unfortunately those businesses didn't make a lot of money. And so the path from poverty to upper middle classdom was college education. Ran off to Cincinnati, Ohio, because it was as far away from home as I could get and still stay in state. And 5 years later, I graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a degree in accounting, with a degree in finance, with a wife, with a new faith, and a new baby, all at the age of 23. And I spent 15 years climbing the corporate ladder of accounting, doing all kinds of different work there, different plants, before I realized that this ladder is leaning against the wrong tree. I get up into middle management and look around and say, hey, is this all there is to life? Yes, I'm making a good money, but I want to leave a greater legacy. And it was a couple things in combination that nudged me onto a 10-year path that led to higher education. And the first thing was Clifton StrengthsFinder. You mentioned so many times in your program that students, why are we expecting students to understand what they're good at and what they should do for the rest of their life at 18? And the Clifton StrengthsFinder really helped me understand that I just love learning. And so where can I go to get paid to learn? And where can I go to leave a greater legacy? And the other thing that happened was in my very last class on the MBA capstone class, a professor pulled me aside one night after class and said, hey, Tim, have you ever thought about higher education? I think you'd be good at it. And those two things worked together to plant the seed of, wow, yeah, maybe that would be something that I could do and do in a completely different way from most people and give back in a very meaningful way.
Fantastic. Appreciate the depth of the story and sort of the understanding there. One thing that we talk about a lot in this show that you already brought to the surface was mentorship. And had that person not made that comment to you, that seed might not have been planted and it might not have blossomed into what it is today. Students, parents listening, the way to mentorship is engagement. You have to engage with your professors. You have to engage with the community around you. And if you do, you will find those people that will be a guiding light for you. And so never underestimate the power of a mentor.
Yep.
You've been in corporate America. You've done the accounting. You've done the finance. Now you're teaching that stuff. You've obviously taken the education as far as it'll go on that subject matter and continue to push the envelope. What is it that families, parents, college-bound people are missing as far as the college arena, college game is concerned?
There are a number of things that you're so show hasn't quite touched on yet. The first one was something that my wife heard from her family. Said, I don't know why you're looking at those college brochures. We can never afford college. We can never afford to send you to college. And that is just plain wrong. College may not be the best fit for everyone, but people can afford college provided that they are willing to pursue it and maybe even delay it for a little bit. So you have what most people don't understand about the financial planning system is the difference between dependent students and independent students. A dependent student is somebody that's younger than the age of 24, not married, has no children, etc. A independent student is someone that's 24, has served in the military, is married, or something along those lines. An independent student is based upon their own financial status. They don't need anything from their parents. There's no documentation. And so they get more financial aid awarded to them and more access to loans and need-based aid because most people at the ripe old age of 24 aren't making a lot of money. Rather than saying college is never an option for you, most people need to understand that maybe we need to delay this decision for a little bit and find out what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, explore the community college route, and then get into a higher education profession that aligns with your core values, that helps you find meaning and purpose in life.
Yeah, and I'd love to add to that too, because maybe we haven't mentioned on the show, but I would say when people say they can't afford college, they're probably thinking about it in the mind frame of, I can't afford for you to go to college for 4 years right out of high school, where again, the concept of potentially even delaying, but what if you take a course a semester? You're going to be a longer time frame that you'll be taking classes, but at the same time, very affordable. I know this because this is how I got through college at the end of it, right? Was working full time and not being able to take a full course load. So it was a couple classes a semester, did it longer in 4 years, gets done. So the idea that affordability is, you're narrowly looking at it as I can't afford for you to live on campus for the next 4 years, when there are other options that are out there. They just may not be what the typical college pathway tends to be, but there are definitely options that are out there that I think people need to be aware of. Yeah.
And as financial planners, we love to optimize things. We love to look at big, complicated problems and find the best solutions. And so I'd love to just explore with you, what is the optimal, cheapest way parents and families that don't have a lot of resources to pay for higher education? And I think that starts with a community college. My oldest daughter is 28. She's going to a community college right now in Texas, living at home, and the government is paying her to go to school. Her community college tuition costs $1,500. Is an independent student, so she gets a maximum Pell Grant of $73.95 a year, and the difference between the Pell Grant that's awarded and her tuition can be used to pay for things like healthcare expenses and travel. There's this sweet spot, I think, where you take a couple years, you serve others, maybe you serve a mission, maybe you do AmeriCorps, you get some life experience, and then you start a community college route, make sure that you can graduate, because we have this big problem of people not graduating in 6 years, especially by race. So you have that toe in the water of community college. Okay, this is what it's like. This is what's going to be expected of me. And then when you're turning 24, transitioning into a 4-year school, you're still on your parents' Affordable Care Act plans because they can keep you on their medical plan until age 26. And so you don't have to worry about the healthcare expenses. And all of this comes together and says, let's get a few years of experience under the belt. Let's give you some life experience. Let's have you take a StrengthsFinder assessment so you understand what your God-given talents are and what will make you happy, and use a little bit of positive psychology along the way, expressing gratitude and working in something that's meaningful and gives back rather than just take stakes.
that's where I would say the optimal side of things. How you mentioned, like, how do I look at that situation? I never want anyone to think that there's a specific pathway before you've explored all the options. So maybe it is the delay. Maybe it is community college. But every parent that's going to have a college-bound student needs to know how the system works, because you may look at it and you may end up saying, I have a great student. We don't have a lot of resources, as you put it, to really put you through school, but there may be scenarios, and I know because I have a lot of families that this has worked for, that they are going to schools with now a six-figure price tag for less than community college because of the amount of financial. And you hear these things a lot now where you're Princeton, Harvard. Oh, if you make under $150,000, it's free tuition. If you make under 100 grand, it's free. You don't pay anything. And the formula, and what people need to understand, is that every school essentially uses a formula to say, this is what we think you can afford based on your resources, your income, your assets. And if you don't know what that number is that the schools think you can afford, you don't know if you can actually afford college or not. If they say, hey, we think you can afford $5,000, you go, oh, if we get accepted, you mean I'm only going to have to pay $5,000? Now, it's not at every school, but there's a lot of schools that happens. You say, oh, I thought it was 100. We can afford 5. So don't dismiss that you just assume you can't afford, and then you go a different route. Now, if you don't get into those schools, or you end up only getting into some state schools that are still unaffordable, the pathway that you mentioned, again, there has to be a financial fit. You cannot put your own retirement as a parent at jeopardy. You cannot have the kids graduate with a mountain of debt that they can't get out of, that they can't start their adult life off. Completely understand that. There are different ways to make schools be a financial fit, the pathway that you mentioned, but I think the understanding of it is number one on how you can optimize your plan. And the sooner you start realizing these things and the sooner you start planning for them, then even when you talk with experts like us, that, okay, we can optimize to make what the colleges think you can afford even lower, as long as you plan early enough. So that's how I would answer that question, tying in how you put it.
And imagine working with a family whose income is $10,000 or $20,000. What could you do there? And that's what you're going to be if you're working with a 24-year-old.
Yeah. And I think in the same aspect, we've covered so many topics on this show, but one that has been ever present is this idea that there's this calculated time frame that this whole thing takes place in. And it is at 18, you're making this decision. It's the only way to do it. And they don't do the research. The general public doesn't do the research well enough in advance or take thought into it early. My daughter right now is a perfect example in deciding between a couple of schools. She's considering a private school and her current public school, and then there's a STEM academy at the school. And I took the opportunity to do what we do daily for families at the college level, and I presented it to her at the 8th grade level. And I said, here's the way you'll have to look at these decisions for the rest of your life. Number one, I showed her how to do all the research on the programs in the schools themselves. And then I said, and this is how you have to look at the financial side of this. And so the point is, people don't take enough time to do the research necessary to understand the game that they're getting into. All businesses are games. I studied economics. And so one of my favorite classes I ever took was economic game theory. And it's just a concept of, in games between rational players, a business and a consumer, those are arguably supposed to be two rational players, right? There is a winning outcome in all of those scenarios, and you have to figure out how to create that winning outcome. In this, the more preparation you can do, the more understanding you can do, whether the path for your family is a gap year, whether it's taking one course a semester while you're doing a labor job or you're doing an apprenticeship somewhere. It is unique to the family, and it requires thought and it requires research. That's my key on it. And the earlier you do it, the better.
Absolutely. Sometimes that's putting the cart before the horse. I find in financial planning, we often assume people understand what their goals are. And we start into the financial planning process. We start in, here's how you can accomplish all these wonderful goals. I feel, and it's been my experience, we need to understand ourselves first. We need to do a deeper dive of introspection. What makes us tick? Because too often we're climbing the ladder, leaning against the wrong tree, the wrong wall. And that's because we haven't truly understood ourselves to understand what's going to make us happy in the long run. And there's a lot of social psychology, science. You need 5 basic things for overall happiness. You need positive emotions. You need to have engagement, to be really engaged, or flow, as it's called. You need to have meaningful relationships, meaning and purpose in life, and accomplishments. Those are the 5 keys for overall happiness. And we need to understand what drives us, what makes us unique from everybody else. What are our core values? So do a little bit of digging in the Brene Brown world of corporate value, narrow them down to two. When life pulls you in multiple directions, what's going to be your guiding star?
It's interesting you say that, because in our experience, which is helping thousands of families at this point over almost 2 decades of going through this, our first major planning appointment with any family we sit with is more about understanding the psychology, trying to help them establish true goals, meaningful goals for them. We don't even talk about products or money or anything. We're literally having a psychological conversation with people that are, their backs are against the wall, the bills come and due, they haven't thought about college and how it affects retirement and the cash flow scenarios that play out. We spend 2 hours in that just laying out really their goals. We're like almost motivational speakers in that sense, where you almost have to help them paint a picture that they really like before you can even talk about anything else. So it's interesting that you put it that way, that people don't necessarily take the time to reflect on, where am I? Where do I want to be? How did I get here? What are the true goals? What are the true expenses? What are the things that would be wonderful to have in life? And am I willing to work towards those?
Yeah. The other thing that came to mind, I was thinking exactly about our first meetings that we have, is I asked this question: is every parent comes to us because they want to help their kids pay for college. How do you want to define what help means as a parent? Because it is, one family could say, we'll pay $100,000 a year, the kids grad. Other parents will say, we'll co-sign on a loan, we'll pay the interest while they're in school. Both definitions. I'm not here to say what a definition is right or wrong, but both of those scenarios need a plan to make sure that they work.
Yeah.
That they don't fail, whichever how you define it. And to tell, parents say, well, we'll pay 50% of a $30,000 bill, 50% of that's a different plan for each. That's why I always said it's like the definition of help. But that conversation in understanding what a college will cost, what the downsides are if you're only going to pay 20, what that potentially leads to if school costs more than 20. It is a deep conversation that I always so enjoy having, because it's basically, like you said, it's helping the families truly create their own plan, not our plan. We are helping them. And that's where I love that. The other thing that I wanted to touch on when you mentioned the 5 keys to happiness, the other thing that we always want is, we want students, we call it the social, academic, and financial fit when they're going to a school. You have to nail those. And how you laid out the 5 keys, I'm like, students, you may not be thinking about this from a financial perspective, but when you're looking at a school, everything you just mentioned, the setting, the relationships, the drive, that's what you got to be looking for to make sure that it's the right college as well. So there was some tidbits in there for both students and parents that I think are great takeaways.
Yeah.
And that fit piece, you mention it often. I would also add, this is a great time for people to learn about their spirituality as well. You're away from the home, you're away from family, and you can draw closer to God in various different ways. And so we need to encompass the whole person, not just the intellectual side, not just the social side, but there is a spiritual element as well that students really need to actively consider.
But I think, to put it and to not take anything away from that, right? These concepts that we're discussing, the paths that people take to get there, right? Part of the, I guess, the expression that parents give me a lot is, I want them to have the college experience. I want them to go learn to be independent, which comes with spirituality. It comes with getting your butt out of bed when it's time to get out of bed, and some personal gain in that. And so I think it's about growth in all areas. And so when we talk about some of these alternative pathways, the delays or the working while going, those are intense growth models, right? To do that successfully, I feel that it needs a mature individual or someone that has struggled and understands what the alternative to struggle is. I have struggled long enough. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it because the end is, I will have my education. I will have what I need. I think it's just interesting that people want their children to go so that their children can grow. It's time to leave the nest in type of environment. And whatever that means, it may mean going to a job from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then going to class from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. exam, or it could be you're going to campus, you have to live, you have to get up, you have to show up, you have to be present. So it's all about the growth, spiritual and otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that we haven't really touched on is the day-to-day financial management. We expect these 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds to get this lump sum of money from financial aid and somehow magic to budget that successfully so they still have enough money to get home at the end of the semester. And there are all kinds of things that are going to compete for those financial aid dollars. You can really update your dorm room with lofts and mini fridges and microwaves and things like that at the expense of getting to the end of the semester and really scrambling to figure out how am I going to afford bus ticket, the train ticket, the gas just to get home.
Yeah. So there's a couple things actually. It was going to be my next question, which is leading, but even before college, how is important that parents don't necessarily shield the kids from financial discussions? And I know that I frame it in a way with parents to say, you have to talk finances because that financial fit is real when we talk about the fit, like what a school is going to cost, who's paying for it, how much. Parents always want the kids to have skin in the game. But at the same time, there's a lot of parents that are like, we don't want to talk money with the kids. And I'm like, they need to know, like they're getting to that point where that independence, there's financial responsibilities that come with it. We always make suggestions, maybe giving away some of our secrets here, but like once the student graduates high school, I love the idea of having the kids have to write a check to mom and dad. There's a financial responsibility that their hard-earned money is going to college. Dave introduced me to that concept and I've grown on it, that I suggest it to every family that I work with. And then, hey, as a parent, if that money didn't have to be used, you can give it back. We weren't the Grinch. We just wanted you to feel the actual responsibility with paying a large bill and knowing what that responsibility can be. And then, hey, during the school year, if you want weekend spending money, you got to be working, but your full-time job is to be a student. Don't work too much to earn money. You'll drop out. It's going to be too much, spread too thin. But I think the idea of not just from a student perspective, a parent, knowing your monthly, but your day-to-day, I always look at it from a monthly standpoint and say, how much money comes in? How much goes out? What are you spending it on? If you don't know what you spend your money on, you would never be able to know if you can truly save or not. You need that self-reflection. And then the idea of starting with the end in mind, I need that bus ticket home at the end of 6 months. How much is that bus ticket? What do I have? And what can I spend each month and earn and save to make sure I have? Again, it's a goal, right? Doesn't matter if the goal is $100 or $10,000. Establish the goal, work your way up to it, and look at your month to month, your day to day, as you mentioned. That's important for anyone who's going to be an adult in this world, whether it's saving for college or saving for the bus ticket. You have to do some self-reflection with that as well.
And parents, whether you realize it or not, your children are learning their financial habits from you. And so we need to be very intentional about the kind of lessons that we are teaching our children, because they are going to, the research shows, they will follow your path, your example. It's family socialization of money. I've written co-authored some articles on that as well. But the earlier, the better, the more transparent we can be about our own personal finances with our children and help them understand why we're making these trade-offs. Why are we asking you to drink water instead of pop at a restaurant? So
Did you hear the Ohio come out right there? Did we hear it? Did everybody hear that? We got a
pop and soda, sorry.
I love it.
But we make these intentional little decisions so that we can stretch those budget dollars so that we can do more of the things that we want to do.
I was going to ask you again along these lines, but teaching finance in college, how are you as shocked as sometimes I'll say we are, at the lack of knowledge that kids have coming out of high school, that it seems like personal finance is no longer even a discussion at the high school level? And are we wrong, or do you see that same thing, like you're starting at square one when you're getting some of these college students? I was curious to ask you about that.
Yes, we see it. And as a result, I am trying really hard to break down the barriers so that any person can come and take one of my intro to personal financial planning classes and get all of these basic life skills without any prerequisites, without any declaring of major this or major that. And we start class one with understanding of ourselves. So what are your core values? What are your strengths? Then understanding who am I as a person, what makes me tick, then we can build upon that. And who do I want to become when I am my best self? What does that look like? And how can I continue to do things like expressing gratitude to help me maintain my overall health and well-being? Because there's a biopsychosocial model of health. It's all interrelated. And that's why I get really frustrated with some of the financial advice that's biased towards just talking to the head. You need to talk to the head, the heart, and the soul. It's an entire package, not just one or the other.
I don't want to go here because I will rip the financial services industry apart because I don't think there's a fair job done for people. I look at it as my goal as an advisor, as a planner, as a financial representative is to educate the consumer as much as humanly possible. Right? We always say in our office, all products have attributes. All attributes solve challenges. What are the challenges? We'll figure out the products. We'll figure out the way to do it. We'll figure out the way to get there. That solving that challenge, establishing that challenge first is the thing that matters. With the rapid change in the financial services industry, it is disheartening sometimes. The reason we specialize where we specialize is because we didn't want to be in the shark infested waters that are out there. So kudos to you for your approach and what you do in the financial stewardship, what I would call it, that is lacking in the industry. But I want to switch gears to something that you talked about that is very important for people to realize. There's the 4, 5, 6-year graduation rate. There's the rates of people persisting in college and getting out. People don't look at that metric. They don't believe us when we tell them the metric is based on 6 years, right? If you go anywhere you want to research, it'll have a graduation rate. That graduation rate is a 6-year, not a 4-year, right? Why is that so important? And what does it tell us?
It is so important because you don't understand just by looking at that overall number how it breaks down by race. Okay. Joe, you went into that number on your podcast. We have an overall 6-year graduation rate in this country of around 60%. Now, when you start breaking it down by race, who do you think has the highest 6-year graduation rate? Asians have a 75% 6-year graduation rate. Who has the lowest graduation rate? Blacks, 44%. Hispanics, you're now up to 50%. In 6 years, I got a 50-50 chance of graduating from an institution with a degree. Otherwise, I'm going to have the worst of both worlds. I'm going to have the student loan debt and nothing to show for it to help me get out of this never-ending cycle of poverty. So this metric, in my opinion, should be the number one metric that families look at. Okay, what is the 4-year graduation rate? What is the 6-year graduation rate for someone that looks like me, so that they know going in, hey, is this a risky decision or is this not so risky? How well have I been prepared as a high school student in my local high school to take these challenging courses? And then at the professor level, when you get students that may be underprepared, it's your job to help them learn and catch up and lift them up to the level where they need to be competent or whatever they're striving to learn, and do that in an innovative and creative way, not just death by PowerPoint. That's one of the things I think I am fortunate. I've had the opportunity and the space to be very creative in the classroom.
Very high rating on ratemyprofessor.com, by the way. I don't know if you've seen your score. So
thank you. But I won a very special innovation award for changing a traditional corporate finance class into a fantasy role-playing game simulation, and based off of The Lord of the Rings. And so
the thing that is shocking to me is even at the best levels, you talked about Asian graduation rates 75%. That means a quarter of the people that enter don't exit. And then when you go to 50-50 and when you go to 60-40, right, you think about the financial commitment, the time commitment, and then the burden on the other side. And there's a lot that goes into that. I don't mean to diminish anybody's trials and tribulations or struggles in any way. Sometimes it's an affordability issue. Sometimes you got to raise a kid, or you got to take care of a spouse or parents or someone that's sick and ill, and you just lose sight of it. Was it last week's episode or the week before we were talking, and we dabbled in the sort of tenured professor environment where the tenured professor just wants to stand on stage and give their lecture pressure and doesn't care about the outcome, and nor do they have to, because there's a guarantee of job at that point. And I think this is a crisis of the environment that exists, right? It is a cause and effect relationship. We, or the institutions themselves, the environments they're bringing people into, they have to modernize and they have to create a way for kids to learn what they need to learn, because it's not good for the institution when people drop out. It's not good for the bottom line of the business model of college. It's not good for the economy of the United States of America for the people to not get the education necessary to get the old people to retire. No offense to anyone aged, but there is a natural progression that jobs need to open for young people to get jobs. And so we have to push that progression forward. It's a big picture issue that exists when we don't get the graduates we need. I want to make one other point that we touched on a little bit, but we didn't get into, and we have supported this. College isn't for everyone. I don't think any of us are preaching that, but man, you got to figure that out. The earlier you figure that out, the better the outcome. There was a report, by 2030, we will have 600,000 electrician jobs that are needed just to keep the U.S. Navy fleet in good repair. That's not the buildings. That's not the new construction. So there's a million jobs where we don't have people taking those roles. And so, man, if you can take some of those assessments, we use the strong interest inventory, we use Myers-Briggs assessments. We're trying our best to get these reliable reports early in people's hands. And it's not about us telling you what you should do. It's about us giving you information about yourself so that you can sift through it, you can distill it, and you can just say, yes, I align with that. That's where I'm going, and that's what I need to do. And so parents, take it seriously.
And in our profession, we talk about a fiduciary responsibility. And I don't think we're doing anyone any favors if we know a kid struggled in high school and has low ACT scores, SAT scores, is maybe a person of color, and we see these 6-year graduation rates, and we know those bottom 25th percentile students are the most likely to not graduate. We're not doing anyone any favors, like you said, and it's like a breach of fiduciary responsibility to go promote them to make a decision that is just going to wind them deep in debt. And I think that's one of those hidden things that needs to be unhidden about college.
I would also say, from the research standpoint, these numbers, they are available. I mean, we have a database with the College Planning Network where you can see all of these graduation rates at every school. The other thing that I've always really touted is the first year retention rate, freshman retention rate. And for you that don't know, that's what percentage of freshman class came back for year two. If you're seeing 50%, okay, that is alarming. If you're seeing in the high 90s, that's a good sign, right? The reason why it's so important, I think, if you see, if you're a certain color, as you said, like, how do I look? What are the outcomes of previous students? When you go and visit that school, that is a question that I would be asking. My son's 7th grade, and when we're visiting colleges, if we're seeing a school that he really likes, but it has a lower retention rate, I'm asking that question, because maybe there's a reason as to why kids don't come back that has absolutely nothing to do with my son. And like, for an example, maybe it is a school that is very faith driven, and my son is very faith driven, and the ones that don't come back are the ones that's not their cup of tea. And so I'm like, that's actually a fit for us. Like, you want to do your research and find out, and you can see a lot of these numbers. It's out there.
Where it is.
And the more that you research these things, one, you can then have the questions to not just ask yourself, but then go ask the school when you give them a visit, but then also self-reflect and say, again, is there a risk here? I think this is the school for me, but man, look at that number. Am I going to be one of that 25%? Is that a risk? Where the other schools I'm looking at, oh, it's 5%. It's risk management in a different way that we usually talk as a financial advisor about risk management. But those are huge things that can be done. It takes time. That's where Dave said that the earlier you start with these things, you're not cramming, trying to get all of this knowledge and make quick decisions. Like, the earlier you start and learn these numbers that schools have, you can build that list that we always end up going, okay, now there's a social fit, there's the academic fit, and now there's the risk fit that we could potentially add to that, right? Like, hey, don't be a statistic in the negative side for that school. I think there's some great stuff that parents should know.
behavioral economics, we learn for very big decisions, you really need to slow it down. And we have a fast brain that makes very quick emotional decisions, and then we have the logical brain. And that requires a lot of time and effort, but these big decisions you can't get wrong. So you need to take the time to do it. The other question I would have at that college interview is, who's teaching the class? Am I going to be taught by a graduate assistant, a research assistant, or am I going to be taught by a tenured professor that is in it for the passion? Because that makes a huge difference.
This was years ago. This was an old episode, but she wasn't the dean. I can't forget. She was head of the finance for Drexel, and I can't remember her name. But anyway, she said, look at how many professors.
Yeah, this is huge.
Are alumni of the school they're teaching at. And if 80-90% of the professors are all students that came there, take that with a grain of salt that they all teach and learn the same exact way. Whereas if you have a variety of professors from all over the country, from all different universities that learned it a different way, that they may bring a different teaching style, that is a step up versus, hey, it's our way or the highway. It was a very interesting, again, I don't know. I don't think that can be, you'd have to really dive into the faculty, page by page. I don't know if there's research on that to show what percentage of the teachers and the professors are alumni of the school. But if it's a high number, it's actually not a great thing. So that was also something else that was a little interesting. It would take a little bit more time to research, but if you're looking down the faculty and everybody's graduate of, it's, ooh, okay, they're just keeping things in-house. Might not be a good fit. That's all.
Wash, rinse, and repeat.
Yeah, that's it. Do
you have any final comments you want to make to the listening audience?
One last thing is just to promote the Certified Financial Planner designation. Here is a very viable career path where you're helping people and you're helping them accomplish goals, and it requires an education from a CFP board registered institution. We happen to be one of those. Our students won first in North America, third in the world in a Bloomberg trading competition in 2022. And so you can get high quality education without having to go to name brand schools and paying that super high tuition price.
Awesome. Dr. Griesdorn, we really appreciate your time today. This has been College Knowledge.
Yeah, tune in next week. Love the episode. Thanks for all the insight and the conversation today. Highly enjoyed all of it. I hope the parents got a lot out of it today, because I know when I do, I know the parents will as well. So this was a great one.
Thank you, Joe and Dave. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right, well, tune in next time for another episode of College Knowledge. We'll look forward to seeing you. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay sane.